right, good afternoon, and welcome to Pensports Podcast with Wube Gabray and Frank Edgar. I'm Frank Edgar.
I'm Wube Gabray.
Good to be with you this afternoon. We're talking Peninsula sports here in the Peninsula of Virginia. We're going to cover a lot of things this year. Wube, what's on your mind today on this Sunday?
Well, the main thing is community involvement and giving back to the community, showing the community what great things we have going on in the Peninsula in sports and everything that's going on, all the great things.
Well, when people ask me why we get along so well on our broadcasts on LSC, it's because we believe that sports do have a place in our community and in a way to bring our community closer to our young people in particular.
Well, it's changed so many lives. I mean, the one thing that irritates me is when people say it's just a game. Well, just a game takes you all over the world. Just a game, you can graduate from college, you can get a job. And what sports does for a lot of these young kids, it gets them out of situations that they probably wouldn't be able to get out of. And that's what sports does.
Well, we were waiting on a guest this afternoon. We're going to talk about a recent event here that's really nationally known, the Virginia Duals.
Something that it's a huge deal here in Hampton. It's funny. A buddy of mine at college that worked with our guest that's going to come on in a little bit, Jason Bryant. I went to college with him, and all he used to talk about was the Virginia Duals. I didn't know what it was. He's a Pocosa native, and he's emceed a lot of the Olympic trials and the Rio Olympics, and he talked about how big the Duals was, and now that I'm a part of, seeing it every year, it's a big deal at the Coliseum every year.
So we're going to ask our guest about bringing the Duals to the rest of the country this year. They've started some online broadcasting of matches out here at the Coliseum, and then annual event's been going on a long time, and brings together a lot of teams from around the country. So I'm excited to hear from him. We've got some good basketball going on around the Peninsula, Wube. You and I got to do the Bethel-Kecoughtan game a week ago. Saw a really good girls game that night, and then the boys game a little bit lopsided.
Well, the boys game was lopsided because Coach Breon was trying to figure out, what these young guys can do for him. I mean, he told you in the pregame interview he lost, 6 seniors? So, and 3 of them are playing college ball right now. One of them is playing football at Notre Dame. So he's a redshirt, and I'm talking about Jeremiah Owusu. So he's I never like to use the word rebuild because this area it's hard to rebuild when you have so much talent. But Bethel's in somewhat of a rebuilding stage right now, and they're trying to figure out some young guys and where they fit in the program.
Well, he certainly had a bench full of young guys the other night in that game. A lopsided win by the Kecoughtan Warriors, but not really a surprise. Kecoughtan really one of the best-looking starting 5 of all teams on the Peninsula.
Well, they have a 5-game winning streak right now, and Marion Moore, which we'll talk about later, scored 1,000 points this past week, and he's a 4-year starter, along with his buddy Grant over there at Kecoughtan. So they're doing a great thing. I mean, Coach Goss, he's an Ivan Thomas disciple. He comes in, he was on the staff with those great runs that Ivan Thomas had, who's now at Providence. He comes in and he, kind of regaining the culture, so to speak. Nobody can regain what Coach Thomas did. I mean, what he did when he came in, he took them to state quarterfinals and the district championships. So he's not at that level yet, but he's keeping the team afloat right now, and they have a good team. And then right now, they're 8-5, going into next week.
But 4-0 in the last 4.
Yeah.
They're 4-0 in 2018, as the Daily Press pointed out, and really a team when they walk on the court, they don't look like they're as good as they are, but they play well together. They all can score, all 5. In fact, you mentioned Marion Moore scoring his 1,000th point in his career just a week ago. Marion Moore often is not the lead scorer. LaDarren Grant had the game winner the other night, and the other 3 starters very impressive in the game we saw.
Grant, you're right. He had the game winner. Marion Moore is the main guy, but coaches are smart. They're going to make sure Marion Moore doesn't score. So other guys have to step up, and that's what Grant did against Woodside the other night in that game winner.
Well, that's the game we have seen. We mentioned the girls' game. Kecoughtan goes into Bethel, gets the overtime win against the Bethel Bruins. In a very close game, we saw some good basketball in that one. And those 2 teams, for those of you that have lived somewhere other than Virginia for the last 2 weeks, had been off the court for a week or so due to the snow.
And, I think Bethel – didn't play since the holiday tournament, and a tournament they won over at Boo's Place. So, these young kids, they sit around, they play video games, and they watch TV. They're not in any basketball shape. They come back. We didn't know what to expect on that game. It's actually a pretty good game. You can tell Bethel was a little rusty. They had a couple girls who didn't play because of injury, and one had a death in the family. So, it's Bethel's in a tough situation. I mean, they have young players too. They have a couple seniors, but Coach Dean is trying her best to get that team back on track.
Well, I think we expect great things out of that team later in the year. Of course, we're still mid-season. There are some great teams around the peninsula. One on the boys' side, the Lafayette boys, 12-0 as of last night. They're off to a fast start. On the girls' side, the young lady down in Phoebus is setting the world on fire.
She is a sophomore. We're talking about Diamond Johnson. And she is playing lights out. Just scored 33 points the other night at 42. She had had a 50-point game not too long ago. I mean, she's awesome. She's not on pace to catch Lakeisha Frett, the all-time great at Phoebus, who's now at UVA as an assistant coach. But she's gonna come close. She's gonna come really close.
She's a sophomore. I was trying to explain to my mother the other night that this young lady's a sophomore. She's already over 1,000 points. It actually was 35 the other night against Woodside in a loss. If you looked at the box score in the Daily Press, you see that as a team, Phoebus had 7 3-pointers, and then they note Johnson, 7. So she's the main shooter for that squad, but getting some help, and I think Phoebus will get stronger as these other players grow to play with Diamond Johnson.
Yeah, they will. I mean, like I said, they just lost the other day to Woodside, but with her scoring the way she has, hopefully she can keep up that pace. I would love to see somebody break the Keisha Frett record. And if she can't do it, I don't know who will.
Yeah, I mean,
Frett scored 3,290 points before she graduated in '93 at Phoebus. So no players come 500 points of that record. So if Johnson can't do it, I don't know who will.
Well, with real good history of girls basketball, of course, my friend Lynn Anastasio, probably the first great girls player for Phoebus she graduated in 1980, went on and played at Virginia for 3 years, and before that Louisiana Tech, where she won a national championship.
Which was a powerhouse back then.
Between Lynn and Lakeisha Frett now, Diamond Johnson, a nice tradition over there at Phoebus.
Nikki Reed was another great player at Phoebus. So they've had some great players, and that's saying a lot. That's just showing how much of an impact Frett had back then. I mean, Diamond Johnson. I mean, every game you see, she's averaging 33 points a game.
Yeah, I don't think, and she cannot mathematically catch her, is what the Daily Press reported. Right. Well, we've got some great basketball around the community. We hope to be able to get to the Bay Rivers District a couple times, report on those teams, and of course, in this format, if the coaches want to get a hold of us, we're on Twitter at Pensports Pod, PENSPORTSPOD, and we're also at Gmail. It's Pensports Podcast at Gmail, so you can get a hold of us at any time, and we'd love to hear from the coaches if they think there's something they want to talk about. We'd love to have them on the air with us during the podcast.
Yeah, I was going to say we're definitely going to have links and everything going out, so we'll definitely promote this podcast. It's a great addition to the community and to the sports world in the Peninsula.
Well, we were reminded this week in a note. There was an event that happened 4 years ago on the Peninsula, involved a young man that I'd known in sports around the area, and a tragedy of his loss 4 years ago, and then the loss of the guy who took his life just this past week reminds us all the importance that community plays and can help prevent these tragedies. And we hope that we can use sports and that more members of the community recognize that sports serve a role to help our community and help our young people in particular and connect them. And so we want to introduce our listeners to these young men and women that play sports, and maybe, just maybe, Wu Bei, when they meet them in person at a 7-Eleven or at the school board meeting or somewhere around the school, they'll be able to reach out and shake their hand and compliment them on what they've been doing, at least on the court or on the field.
I tell the story all the time. It was at Wawa Mercury, and I bumped into Tyrod. He was in there like me, ordinary guy. Spoke, had time to talk to me and my daughter. My daughter was like, "You think he'll remember who you are?" I said, "Of course he would." I was a little nervous. I didn't think he would, but the type of person he is, like you were just saying, he came and talked, took pictures with us, and just a community guy.
Well, Tyrod Taylor is a very popular visitor at Armstrong Elementary, where he goes and reads at least once a year. He drops by and sees his old teachers, and of course now the starting quarterback of the Buffalo Bills had a good year this year. and was able to get his team into the playoffs.
And we're going to try to have him on later on in our podcast career.
Certainly hope so.
Certainly hope we'll be able to have him on. He's a great guy, and we want to definitely let the listeners see what he's doing and how much of an impact he's had on this community.
Well, we've mentioned the snow already. We really have got we got some catching up to do. All the teams were out for at least a week, and of course, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know this, when they play, when we have a snow break and the children are out of school, they cannot practice. Mm-hmm. So it does damage the winter sports.
It does, and when we saw it in the games we did. The kids were out of sync, and when you don't practice, it takes off your rhythm, your conditioning. So I know the coaches are just pulling their hair out, not being able to practice and even communicating with the kids face to face. So it was tough. It was tough on them. And then a lot of teams got canceled last week because they didn't have any practice time. A couple games that they weren't played on. Last week.
The Hampton Heritage game moved off of Friday night to this coming Tuesday night.
Yeah, they didn't have any practice. I mean, they didn't practice at all. They were out all week because of I think they missed 2 days of snow, and they came back on Friday.
In fact, I read, I think Friday, that the exam schedule now is so condensed that they've canceled the exams
so
in the Hampton and Newport News schools.
You're going to average your first and second quarter grades, and that'd be your semester grade.
Well, part of our podcast, we want to reach out to the schools on the far end of the peninsula. We certainly follow the Bay Rivers, Lafayette, and War Hill, Jamestown, all those schools. New Kent up there in the north, and Smithfield on the south side. We want to catch up with them. They've had quite an athletic year over for the Packers of Smithfield High School, so we want to follow along with them. We've got lots of people to talk to. We were actually, Wube and I got to see both Owusu brothers tonight at Bethel High School. Jeremiah just in the middle of his first year at Notre Dame, redshirted, and Joshua in the middle of his second year at William & Mary, and he informed me he's walked on the football team and he'll be on the gridiron this fall.
I think he said he's playing outside linebacker.
Well, he looked good. He looked like an outside linebacker. All right. Well, it looks like we're going to have our guest here.
That's Jim Heath, and he's going to talk to us about. He's going to recap the Virginia Duals that were held at the Hampton Coliseum. Jim, are you there?
I'm here.
Hey, Jim, it's Frank Edgar.
Frank, how are you, sir?
Doing fine. We're on the air, Jim. Glad you could join us today in our inaugural Pensports Podcast. Sounds like you had quite a night last night in Savannah.
Yeah, the women played well, 181-53. And Monjay Finney-Smith, the senior from Portsmouth, set a school record with 13 steals.
Good night. Well, she had quite a ball-playing brother.
Yeah, Ben.
Yeah, it runs in the family. Yeah. It runs in the family. You got Ben Finney, played at Old Dominion. You got Dorian with the Mavericks.
Right, very good.
So,
and then your men had a wild game last night.
Men, I joked with their SID beforehand, asking him if I should warm up my neck muscles, figuring that game was going to be up and down. He's like, get ready. And he was dead right. 103-101. We came up on the short end of that stick.
Well, quite a contest. So, yeah, I know you held the lead. Of course, the lead changed. We probably had 30 of those last night.
Yeah, I went back and forth for a while, especially in the second half.
Very good. Well, Jim, we got you on to talk about the Virginia Duals. Just had another great Duals here, and I know you've been around the Duals for a while, both in your role at the Apprentice School and now at Hampton University. Tell us a little bit about the Virginia Duals this year.
38th annual Duals was held 2 weekends ago. Had 20 colleges, actually 21 colleges. The national division went from 12 to 13 teams this year. Had 48 high schools. The national college division, a couple years ago, they made a switch in an effort to guarantee everybody at least 3 matches. They broke up the teams into pools of 3. And they had the Hampton River, York River, Pocosin River, and a fourth one that's 3, Yeah. But everybody went, your pool winners went into championship round to wrestle for first through fourth. Pool second place finishers went into a silver bracket, and third went into a bronze bracket. Championship bracket of the national division this year was won by Arizona State.
Yeah, see, they had quite a match with Virginia Tech for that championship.
21-15, Tech was the winner in their pool. They defeated Oklahoma, and Arizona State beat Northern Iowa.
Hey, Jim, talk about the online viewing now. I see that's been a different component going into how people can actually view the event now.
Yeah, Jason Bryant, who you know very well.
Oh yeah, I know Jason pretty well from college. Yeah,
he is really the main cog behind getting the duels going with Flow Wrestling, and they had, I think I heard him say toward middle of the day on Saturday, they had like 400 plus new viewers. They were very pleased with the online numbers. They had cameras set up on all 10 mats. Had for lack of better words, a production area that was set up at the press table, and anybody from all across the country could log in. It was like $15, and you had all access for the entire weekend, high school and college.
It's an interesting way to go, Jim, and certainly wrestling is a sport that somewhat teeters on anonymity, except it used to be very popular in the Olympics. But it's a wonderful sport, and I've been to the duels. It brings together a lot of folks here on the peninsula.
Oh, yes, and especially when you have local teams that are progressing through the bracket, like Pocosin in the American high school this year made the championship match.
I see
Lost to Camden Catholic out of New Jersey.
Well, and Pocosin, of course, has been strong a long time. You also had a good performance by Kellum, I understand, out of Virginia Beach.
Kellum and Prentice School made it to the third place match in the American College Division.
I see that division won by King University.
Yes,
and my parents will be thrilled. They're both graduates of King College, now King University, so I'll have to remind them that their team came in here and won a championship.
And they beat the former Division I program of Liberty.
Oh, wow. Because Liberty, with their great athletic program now. I also see where Grundy won the black and blue high school division. Grundy, of course, most folks don't know about Grundy, but it's a team from southwestern Virginia that has won many a title in wrestling.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Them and Pocosin back during Pocosin's heyday were always 1 and 1A in Group AA at the time.
Well, Jim, the Virginia Duals have been a big part of our area for a long time. I know Mr. Graham, John Graham, has been involved in that, and others in the area that have done so much to bring that to the peninsula and keep it here, which has been always a challenge with any event. But we're thrilled that they had a good year this year. Well, tell us a little bit. We're going to close up with you, Jim, but I want to ask you, how is Hampton University doing, and are they having a success attracting some athletes from our area, in particular from the peninsula?
With the new football coach, Robert Prunty, who just came on board in a couple weeks before Christmas, he's gotten a handful of people from 757 to sign on board. I know he's gotten at least 3 out of Suffolk. One of them, and I can say this off the top of my head because I just looked at it again this morning before we left Savannah, that all-state punter from Nansman River, Group 5A. Last name is Lomax.
And they signed, I think you're talking about Darian Butts, the running back from Kings Fork, I believe.
He's another one.
Yep.
That's
And I think they had a lineman from a Suffolk school that the name is unfortunately escaping me right now. But
well, very good. We're looking forward to seeing the new coach and the new program under him, and we appreciate you taking a pause on your ride back to visit with us. We're going to get a hold of you again next year, certainly by next year, and talk to you about the duels going into them.
sounds like a winner.
All right. Thanks, Jim, for your time. I appreciate it.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
Safe travels. All right, Jim Heath, the athletic director at Hampton University, filling us in on all of what he's got going on over there. I tell you, we're lucky here on the Peninsula. Our young folks have several schools they can look at. I'm familiar with a couple of young men over in Smithfield that are eyeing the soccer program at Christopher Newport University, which is a terrific program they've got going over there. Most athletics here and CNU are terrific.
Yeah, I mean, you have CNU, now you have Hampton University in the Big South. It's going to attract a lot more players. Norfolk State's in the MEAC. Of course, Old Dominion.
Old Dominion, yeah. William
William
Mary having quite a run on the basketball court this year.
Basketball team's doing well.
And the football team always good.
Yep. So a good mix of different universities here in this area.
Yeah, very much so. Well, we also want to we send out our regards to Renee Camden, our great associate on LSC 48. Renee's been around a while. She lost her mother this past week. Deborah Jean Chappell died early this week, and very sorry for that event, and certainly send out our regards to Renee.
Yeah, definitely. Our thoughts and prayers are with her. She's been suffering for a little while, and Renee definitely needs support from everyone, and we really want to send our condolences out to her family.
Well, we certainly hope to see her back. We're doing another ball game later this season. Hampton Phoebus Phoebus, as I understand. I don't know the date off the top of my head.
I think it's February 6th, if I'm not mistaken, something like that, yeah.
And folks, if you can get out to a game, go out to your local game. I know we got some good teams around here. There's plenty of teams. We're going to start trying to post some schedules for you. I know we'll post when we're out at Phoebus for the girls and the boys game there. Hope we'll get to see Diamond Johnson in our home arena there.
And we want to also talk about Hampton Christian on the private school side, coached by former Bethel star Tony Rutland. They're 11-6. They're led by A.J. Baker and the Tebay twins, Evan and Jacob.
And then they have a third brother that plays as well.
Another brother, yep. So
yeah, that's an exciting program. Hampton Roads Academy and Peninsula Catholic playing well this year.
Yep, and we look to have, like you said earlier, Frank, we look to have all these coaches on to talk about their programs. A lot of these teams don't get much publicity, so our job and our obligation is to get the word out as much as we can on some of these teams and these players.
Yep, and ladies and gentlemen, if you can, get to see them. And if you see one of these young folks out and you learned a little bit about either through us or through the Daily Press, which does a great job, our friend Kate Ann Chulis and her brilliant writing, if you see one, introduce yourself. Tell them how much you appreciate their efforts, and hope that you can get out and see all these people play.
That's it, yep.
Well, it's been a tough week snow-wise for us here, but sunny today, so we're going to get moving on. We'll be bringing you these shows at least once a week, and we'll circulate how to get in touch with us.
Yes, we want to thank, first of all, we want to thank Randy Bagoli, the engineer extraordinaire, and we're going to have more sponsors to come later, but, we want to...
Certainly thank Goldstein, Edgar, and Regan for hosting us today and sponsoring us. A law firm here on J. Clyde Morris Boulevard in Newport News, and we can help all your legal needs, so check us out.
And again, look out for the link. We're going to post it on our Twitter page, and Frank, I guess me and you will also put it on our Twitter pages and Facebook, and we're going to do our best to promote this.
All right, well, thanks for being with us. We'll talk to you next week. That's the Pensports Podcast.